Benjamin Castle are Americans. Watching the footy.
Liam Ryan saying, kick it my way, I want to jump over the pack, and here he comes! Ryan!
This is Buddy Franklin! This is the greatest showman!
Got the handball off to Myers. Myers looking for the lead of Stengel. Gee, they're good. Gee, they're sharp. Razzle dazzle Rioli.
Oh, who else? McDonald!
From inside the centre square. Boys kick the goal. Boys kick the goal. From inside the centre. Foul. Oh, they can't believe that.
Good time of day, whatever time zone you may be in right now. I'm Ethan Castle.
I am Benjamin Castle.
And this is episode 161 of Americans Watching the Footy, our round 5 recap. And I think this was a good round. This was like just about exactly how I like a round to go, in that 6 of the 8 games were either close or surprising in some way, or gave us some interesting conclusions to draw. And of the 2 that weren't so interesting, one was a Cats blowout win. So I'm satisfied.
5 of these games were on American TV. I don't think we're going to have that again for a while, but I think they made the right choices for the games. Thursday marquee, Sunday finale out west because, of course, that's on TV, and then excellent choices for Saturday, as it turned out.
This was also the first time both of our teams won in the same round since when?
Oh, jeez. Was it round 2 last year?
No. Geelong started 0-3.
Oh, right.
It's the first time since round 15 of season 2022, at which time I was in Ohio, I believe. Yeah, I had just gotten into Cleveland. That was a fun one. That was West Coast had the win over Essendon. I think I was still here for that, and then I flew out.
That was a pretty tight one, yeah.
They won by 10. And then the Geelong-Richmond game with the Jack Henry mark.
And Jeremy Cameron's celebration.
Yes.
Few players get more excited for things that their teammates do during a game than Jeremy Cameron. And I think that makes us appreciate him even more than we already would, even, when he doesn't kick 6 goals.
We'll get to that because that'll be the 7th game out of the 8. But yeah, it had been a while since both our teams won in the same round. They also both won in round 4 of 2022, which was the Eagles beating Collingwood and Cats beating the Lions.
I remember that one, Eagles beating Collingwood. I still could not believe that. Was that Nick Nat's last hurrah?
I'd have bet. Are you on the official AFL tipping competition?
I think I got 5 this round.
Well, I always automatically pick against Geelong, so I only got 3 this round, but one of the 3 that I got was the Thursday game. I called that shit.
The Lions actually getting it done at the G. They can only do it against the Demons. Melbourne 8-12-60, defeated by Brisbane 12-10-82. I want to chalk this up more to just the toll of the early season and a very busy starting schedule, especially these past couple weeks, getting to the Demons. But I also want to credit the Lions for so many reasons. The first of which being that they really stopped Melbourne's free-flowing game entirely, especially in the first half. It was such a choppy stop-and-go game. And with the Lions being a dominant stoppage team, that style locking things up quickly favored them a lot. And then when they were able to get out, Melbourne's had a problem with actually stopping ball movement going the other way all year. And oftentimes, Stephen May and Jake Lever and company have helped be able to stem that bleeding, and I guess Tom McDonald in this one. But McDonald was their lone resistance in defense. May got beaten in some one-on-ones for the first time this year.
Unlike a week ago, May played like he was dealing with broken ribs. He had been so good against the Crows. In this game, he looked like he was playing through an injury. I would chalk Melbourne's struggles in this game up to 2 things. One of which seems like a short-term anomaly, one of which seems like a consistent problem.
Are you also factoring in Christian Salem's injury messing with some of their structure?
No, and that didn't help, and I think that was a testament to how important he is.
Remember, started in the middle for the first couple games of the season and then went back to a bit more typical of a halfback role for him, maybe a little bit more inside.
But I thought their midfield just had a really shitty game, which, hadn't happened in a long time. Brisbane's midfield completely outclassed them, and I think it was just a lot of good players on one side having good days and good players on the other side having bad days.
Like Lachie Neale and Hugh McCluggage doing the dirty work really well.
Yeah, and Cam Rado, my God.
no surprise to us.
But in like a true midfield role, because we've seen him in so many different roles, but like as just a ordinary midfielder, that isn't a super common spot where he's been able to excel against some of the best in the game.
I guess not. 14 contested possessions and 9 clearances, going right up there with Neal for the busiest and best work in the middle for the Lions. And I think having Rayner as that extra number was really vital to be able to stop that Melbourne flow. Yes, you could put Dane Zorgo in there at times, but Rayner being on the younger side and maybe still a bit faster, I think that's the right guy to have in there. Also, of course, a down game for Clayton Oliver, and it did look like the finger injury was getting to him in this one a bit as well.
Yeah, probably more than it should.
I already know what the other thing you were going to say is, though.
This is why I thought they were going to lose this game in the first place.
No Kazi.
They don't seem to have any solution in their forward 50 when they don't have Kazi Pickett. Then really they do just turn to, bombing it in and hoping for the best.
What I said once Kazi was suspended was that they had a couple options, and one of them was to bring Caleb Windsor a bit more inside. They tried that a tad, but he was quiet. And Kate Chandler did a decent enough job kicking 1-1 from 18, but nobody's able to make up in full for Kazi's ability to kind of race back into the middle and then affect plays there, plus go forward. He's just a very unique player and it's a very difficult for them to really make up for him in any way, shape, or form.
It's a guy whose statistical output does not match his
structural importance.
Yes. Like his actual numbers are usually not that great. But then you watch him out there and you realize just how significant he is. You see the with and without him experience.
When he makes plays, you always notice.
Final score does not do this game justice. It was 46-16 at half. I actually kind of slept through some of the second half and then went back and watched everything the following morning. 68-25 after 3 quarters. I haven't seen the D's get clapped like this at home or really anywhere in a long time. And again, I think you can just put a lot of this as an anomaly. I mean, it was 80-31 with 12 and a half left. For Melbourne, outside of the Kazi factor, I think a lot of this you can just shrug off as a bad game. Now, for Brisbane, like I said, midfield was awesome. Josh Dunkley, once again, just played with a lot of purpose.
Picking up from last week, definitely there. They kept the numbers strong, and then on the forward side, you had some more opportunities for the smaller pieces there. Charlie Cameron kicking 3-2 and grabbing 9 marks, and Kai Lohman having some great instinct plays kind of on the boundaries within the 50. Made a play on Jug McVee to get a goal. He got Stephen May holding the ball.
Here's my thing that I think when you talk about with the Lions, if they play like this, nobody beats them. Let's just start with that. I can't think of too many teams that could even have a chance playing at their best against the Lions at their best. Maybe the Bulldogs. We'll talk more about them shortly. But I'm not ready to declare the Lions as they're back. Not because I don't think they can play up to this level. Not because I don't think they could definitely end up being a finals team. But as we've seen in the past, if you start slow and it puts you behind the 8 ball, it does a number on your rest and rehabilitation and management. And I think that big picture, they're still going to be shaking off that 0-3 start. If they go and win the next 2 weeks against the Cats and Giants, and they get up to 4-3, I think you can put a lot of that away. If they get into the bye at 8-3, all is well.
Interesting stretch for them coming up. They're going Thursday night, Saturday night, Thursday night, Sunday night.
They do have a pretty tough stretch out of the bye, but if they get into the bye at 8-3, then you can say, all right, we've shaken that off. We're not still behind the 8 ball injury-wise and rest-wise, but a couple more losses, and then you're still battling that slow start throughout the year. And I think that just the fatigue of it could catch up to them, although we can confirm that when they're at their best, these guys are really, really, really good. Also, unsung hero in this game that we hadn't mentioned yet, Ryan Lester. Wow. 17 disposals, 8 marks, was really effective shutting Melbourne's forward entries down and got outside of the defensive 50 and made some good plays.
Never questioned his longer kicking ability, and he just knows how to play his role really well. That's what he's done throughout his career. And never someone who gets the huge plaudits, but always been the next guy up for a while. And it's going to be tough now to take him out, even when Tom Duday comes back in.
But I think he's much less expendable than, say, Jack Payne. As much as I like Jack Payne is, a little bit stiffer. Lester showed off some pretty valuable versatility in this game.
I think Leicester and Darcy Gardner, in the same respect, over the past month have demonstrated that positional versatility that Chris Fagan has talked about.
I think if you're looking at the three tall defenders where they usually have two spots when everyone's healthy, Leicester, Gardner, and Payne, I think Leicester's a cut above the other two.
Which I don't think I would have said at the start of this year. Demons, by the way, tough stretch for them coming up as well.
Good time for them to have a bye, though. I think people thought the fatigue caught up with them. I don't know how much it did and how much was just this was a stinker.
They do have the Richmond and Zach Eve game coming up, but after that, Saturday night against the Cats into Thursday against the Blues is no joke. Trip to Perth against the Eagles, but it's a trip to Perth. Also have to face Freo before they hit the bye.
Yeah, Melbourne's schedule was really interesting because of the way this bye hits and having that Wednesday matchup. So they basically go nearly a full 2 weeks between games, then another week and a half between games. But then you have that Saturday to Thursday turnaround, but then you get another 10-day layoff. And then you finally get back into the normal 6-7 day window until you get to the King's birthday, when before that you have an 8 or 9 day layoff.
Yeah, maybe the strangest spacing of the schedule in the league this year, and the opening round fixture certainly contributes to that too.
Well, I think, where they set up the bye kind of had to be done with where the
Anzac game is.
Yeah, I guess, you know what? The only way they could have done it would have been, Zeb and Richmond, if there was no opening round, would have had to play Thursday and Friday this coming week.
Instead, the Tigers played Sunday. ...
Western Bulldogs 9-13-67, defeated by Essendon 15-6-96.
Caleb Daniel was omitted after being the sub. Bailey Dale was the sub.
Well, Bailey Dale had played pretty well in the last couple of weeks, too.
The Bulldogs were behind the 8-ball for much of the game, and it got blown out against them late when they couldn't kick it for goal accurately to try and get back in things.
Start of the fourth quarter is where they really pulled away, but hot take, of all the results this round, this was the most surprising to me.
Most surprising because Essendon kept their edge?
Just of all the results this round, this surprised me even more than the other game at Marvel, even more than the Sunday finale. I think, really, Sunday finale was much less surprising.
Did you not expect Beveridge's list decisions to catch up to him?
No, I just thought the Bulldogs midfield was way too talented and way too physical. And also, this whole Essendon edge thing is so overhyped and dumb. They did play pretty hard in this game, though, and they deserve credit for that. I mean, just the better team.
I mean, if you are talking about an edge, the midfielders definitely had it in Sam Durham and Jai Caldwell matching up against Marcus Bontempelli and Tom Liberatore, respectively. I just think about this structure for Essendon and who they've got now in more of an inside job, and realize just how important Xavier Dersma has been to really getting Essendon's positioning correct. Dersma is a layer that's been established since his time at Port. He's also very willing to go back and help in defense, which is why his numbers can be really high and why his fantasy output is really strong. That's why I had him from the beginning this year. And I think him going back in defense ends up rubbing off on the rest of the team. But then also with Dersma on the outside, we wondered at the start of the year, maybe Sam Durham really has to fight to get an inside spot. Does Nick Martin probably play more inside as well? The answer was yes in both respects, but it was really noticeable with Durham. This is probably the best game he's had as an inside midfielder in his career.
12 contested possessions. He was super efficient. His clearance numbers, I think there were a couple that got credited to other guys that could have been given to him. I thought he was the best player in this game on an individual standpoint.
And not just the stats that he accrued, but also in limiting Marcus Bontempelli, who Beveridge tried to then get out of that matchup by putting him at more of a half-forward spot. It didn't work. I don't know.
Okay, Durham had 6 clearances. Yeah, Bont started off really hot and then was, he was kind of everywhere at first. And then second half, he was just a little bit more of a good midfielder instead of, generational superstar. Con Liberatore, 10 clearances. He was not the issue, though there was an issue surrounding him at the end of the game.
Hello and welcome to Standing Up School. And you fail.
He's kind of fell, and they said very quickly it's not a concussion thing, but now they're putting him in concussion protocol, even though he has no symptoms, which just the whole thing seems weird. And, look, if you fall like that, there's a good chance it's a head thing, playing contact sport, but it's not necessarily. It could have been dehydration or, his blood sugar is really low and he just kind of like blacked out for a second. But that they didn't even like mention that could have been a possibility makes me think that they were just kind of like
Trying to cover up.
Yeah. And I don't want to question the Bulldogs' health people.
Especially Dr. Gary Zimmerman and his fabulous stash.
Yes. So I'm going to, unless told otherwise, believe that Gary Zimmerman is the voice of reason here and he's fighting against everyone else.
And I base that on absolutely nothing.
The big play that I noticed with Liberatore getting rattled around a bit beforehand was actually a good bit earlier in the fourth quarter when he got tackled hard by Jake Stringer as he kicked, and it resulted in a Xavier Dersma intercept marking goal. But I'm not sure if there was any other real notable play between then and when he fell. So there's still a lot to unpack about this game. I think the other thing that really surprises me about this affair, though, is that Essendon won by making a game more contested against that midfield. I didn't think that was going to be the plan at all. I really thought they were going to utilize Nick Martin and Xavier Dersma on the wing as major ball movers and possession winners. And they really matched the Bulldogs' strengths with their own and really changed the way I thought about the team in some ways.
I will say, like, yeah, Essendon was the more physical team, but I'm just thinking here about the Essendon edge. I think it's just so dumb. But, like, I guess in this case, it does apply a little bit. You know, they played with some physicality. I'm just really impressed that they were able to stand up to that midfield because normally you got to win in the other 50s to beat them. A couple of things. Pairing up Sam Draper and Todd Goldstein, they really limited Tim English, who, as much as I like him, has not been that good to start this year. Despite kicking inaccuracy, I thought it was another good game from Sam Darcy. Same goes for Jamara. Dogs had a couple of bad misses early that I think came back to haunt them. Now, by X score, they did win by less than a point, and that was kind of because of some late garbage time goals. But I did think, regardless of expected score, there were some key moments where they had easy shots they missed, and just like the momentum swing out of those was significant. I don't know if you included those in the notes here, but there were a couple times early and throughout the first half where they had chances to really do damage.
Also, who offered Jamari Ugle-Hagan a dozen years? Is it the Crows, the Hawks, or the Eagles?
I don't know. You know what? If he really like adds a little more muscle, kind of just like widens his frame a little bit, he could be really terrifying. He's just a fun, likable player. I think we did the Nicky Winmar point last year. I think that just endeared him to a lot of people. And I just like his attitude and the way he carries himself.
I could really see him becoming that just strong, full field mark plus top 3 goal kicker consistently in a Jesse Hogan type way. Especially late career Jesse Hogan that we're seeing now as he's doing good things for the
Orange team.
Oh, have we said Fire Luke Beveridge enough?
I love that we were in on this way before, and now it's kind of gone mainstream.
What are the changes that he's making, and what is the reasoning behind them? I don't think Riley Sanders was the worst player on ground either when he was being subbed out.
So first off, you drop Caleb Daniel for James O'Donnell, who I thought was going to be the sub. O'Donnell was probably their most invisible player.
I was thinking it was going to be Oscar Baker who was the sub because that just made sense.
Or Lockie Bramble. I actually do give them credit for what they've gotten out of Bramble. You know, they've kind of used him to get the ball out of the back. I think he might have just been miscast at Hawthorn a little bit. But yeah, this was a bit of a step back after a couple of good games from Harvey Gallagher, which that you can live with. A young player's going to have a couple games where he's just held quiet. Latham Vandermeer didn't do as much.
I think also just O'Donnell's getting back to AFL form after having a really interrupted start to the year.
So why is he playing over Daniel?
Well, that's not the real right role for him either, is a thing. And where is Caleb Daniel supposed to be playing now is the other thing. Because he done decently well at half forward last year, and now he's being shuttled around and being the sub and being taken out. But how are you fucking with Caleb Daniel's positioning so much? Between him and Jack McRae and a couple other guys, there are guys who just don't have a set role here that I think if they want to move to another club and get into just like a more stable position, I think that happens. And we could see a bit of an exodus this offseason from the Dogs. Well, Aaron Naughton signed on. It looks like Tim English will, but Jamara? I mean, there's a reason that dozen-year contract offers out there.
This team just frustrates me. And I'll say again, I definitely noticed this last week and noticed again here. He had 7 turnovers. When Ed Richards is good, everything sticks together. And when he's not, then it kind of just becomes, they kind of really just need Bond and Libba to carry them. Also, when he first got to the Dogs, it was like Adam Drelor, wow, this guy is just like a ridiculous addition to their infield. This year, he's just kind of been accumulating possessions and not creating anything, kind of like the criticism I've had for Rory Laird and a couple other guys.
I'd say less so about Laird this week.
Well, yeah, Laird and Matt Crouch actually both did a good job of that this week, but like I look at Treloar and I look at like how Josh Dunkley started this season, last 2 weeks notwithstanding. Treloar's talent is unmistakable,
but he's got to do more than accumulate. He's got to actually use the talent.
Have a little chat with him, sit down, have a quick meeting, and just say, like, you're getting a lot of the ball, but it's not doing anything for us. We need your possessions to, like, help create things down the field. And right now, that's not happening. So what can we do to fix that?
So I wanted to make sure we went back onto that Fire Loop beverage train, even though I'd had such a good transition going with the comparison of Jamara to Jesse Hogan. And on the topic of that Orange team, unfortunately, Kelly Underwood didn't say it. She should have said it, like, make it your thing, Kelly. Have a thing that people actually like. In the so-called Canberra Cup, I guess, because of Jack Steele, Greater Western Sydney, 11-14-80, defeating St Kilda, 12-7-79. Saints made it interesting on the later end.
Giants had some chances to put this game away. They had been a really accurate kicking team, so some regression is to be expected. I'm just really impressed how they played through not just losing Sam Taylor early, but losing him to a concussion and one that looked really nasty. Like, the collision itself didn't look bad, but you saw him come to the ground, and at first they said, like, he was holding his arm, but it was more just he was kind of motionless, and, like, he had this very blank, empty look on his face that, like, that's scary.
And I think there's a little bit of spinal damage there, but he is in the frame, I think, for a return in 2 weeks' time. Of course, though, that means he missed the game against the Blues. And while it didn't hurt them last year,
that was Carlton not playing for anything other than to secure the Coleman, which they did. And then it was like, all right, let's go home.
I mean, you talk about Carlton getting a lot of breaks.
Yeah, they really do. Just the way this year has gone so far.
Until the very end of their game, yes. The way the Saints came back very late reminded me a little bit of the gather round last year where they scored that flurry of goals in the final minutes to make the game look a lot better than it did otherwise, because the Saints scored the final 6 goals. It was 76-41 after Jake Riccardi scored in the first minute of the fourth quarter. I don't think at this point the Giants really turned things off, but they were getting banged up. Josh Kelly was getting his ribs looked at. Kieran Briggs may have picked up something minor with his wrist, and they lost Steven Canelio to a knee injury as well. Thankfully, it's just a minor MCL tear, so a couple weeks on the sidelines there. Oh yeah, then he's out for the Blues too. Another break there for Carlton in this perennial double-up.
By the way, just looking ahead, and I'll probably mention this more at the end of the show, this next round has some really spicy games, especially Saturday. This is going to be like, to borrow the term that everyone seems to be using now, especially like NBA circles, this Saturday slate will feed families. I don't know why that's become a thing, but
I think actually now you can say that there's probably no bad game on Saturday and even feeding into the first of Sunday.
So here's the thing. You think losing Taylor, you think Max King's going to eat, and he didn't.
And then he picked up a knee knock as well.
However, he was cleared of structural damage. In fact, he could even be in the frame to face the Dogs.
But yeah, I thought between playing the Tigers last week and then Taylor going down, there were multiple chances for King to really go off, and he never really did. And Giants led this game by 35 early in the fourth. And then the Saints made their push, mostly fueled by Brad Hill, who I think was best on ground in this game, I think it's fair to say.
I think that's very fair to say.
A goal, 2 behinds, 33 disposals, 13 marks, 10 score involvements, 2 assists, 805 meters.
And those were functional meters. Like, you think about Riley Bonner's 1,018 meters or whatever it was about a fortnight ago. That's not functional meters game. That's Aaron Hall shit.
This was functional. Perfectly cromulent.
I mean, even though the Saints lost, I'd say damn cromulent of him. However, I think Hill aside, a lot of the Saints got in their own way, especially some of the players a bit further down the list. Some telegraphed kicks that the Giants were able to pick and rebound from very easily. You probably got 3 or 4 of those that resulted in good scoring chances, if not goals. And in a 1-point game, you probably think back to those as really costly.
Mitch Owens with this great intercept mark, and then he immediately kicks over Josh Battle's head, which gives Jesse Hogan a free goal.
I think Owens had a couple 0 to 60 to 0 moments where we realized that he's his own worst enemy. And for a player that we both really like, that's really frustrating, just from a pure fan perspective as well as from an analytical side of things.
You also had, there was one where a Riley Bonner kick got smothered by Brent Daniels to turn into a goal, and then at the start of the fourth, Ryan Burns turning over a handball to James Peatling to get the goal that ended up being the Giants' final goal, put them up 76-41, because from there they got outscored 38-4.
Gotta say about those Giants that you mentioned there, much better game out of the half-forward flank group in general. Daniels has largely kept up at the start of the year, but Toby Bedford and Harvey Thomas had both been quiet the week prior, and Mount Barker, Thomas had been subbed out. I don't wonder if he was really going to be fighting for his spot with Darcy Jones coming into the mix soon, but he bounced back very well, and Bedford was involved in a way that he was for the better part of last year as well. And then when it came to Peatling, we were wondering how he was going to be utilized. And after having that first involvement there, getting that assist to Riccardi, he did end up going back and helping cover some of the defensive spots and had the intercept mark on Josh Battle in the final minute that helped preserve the win.
We had a text conversation about this.
Yeah, well, it was clear that Jack Buckley was going to take that next one-on-one job, but from there we wondered how things were really going to be structured, because Callum Brown is a forward.
Yeah, I was really offended that Nick Del Santo suggested he could go back.
I thought of Peatling, though, as more running mid, and I learned a bit more about his vertical capabilities on, our Friday night.
So
I would have trusted Brown to go back ahead of Peatling was a thing.
So you said it makes sense. Then you asked, who else would you move back? And I said Peatling, or just give Himmelberg a bigger assignment, or O'Halloran. You said Peatling is a running mid, and then he
did have that running mid job that led to that goal, and then went back, and I learned something about him.
He went back and looked like he was comfortable there.
O'Halloran, though, will definitely need to have that midfield and half forward job. If you recall, against the Saints last year in finals, he was the one to make up for Stephen Cornelio's absence in a way, and he'll need to do that again against the Blues and then the Lions. Couple big weeks coming up without Cornelio and Taylor.
I mean, Taylor could be back for the Lions,
Yeah, he could. That is a Thursday night, though.
So that would be at the 12 days. So we'll see. Nick Haynes probably gets back in Taylor's absence.
Congrats on the sex.
Also, best game of the year for Lockie Ash, easily. His ball movement out of the back was really good.
I feel like Lockie's, Ash, and Whitfield don't get the credit they deserve, especially Ash, because Whitfield's been around for long enough and we've seen how some of the movement out of the back has formed around him. But Ash has grown into more of that man on the outside where a lot of what works is just getting the ball toward him. Ash with 26 disposals, 9 intercepts, and 9 marks.
I thought he might have been the Giants' best player in this game.
There's a real argument to be made for that.
I mean, I thought other than that, it was mostly just a combination of dudes. I did like Tom Green in the middle as well, even if his numbers weren't as staggering as usual, a goal from 24 touches.
The Giants had 8 separate players above 20 disposals and
at or above.
And I really appreciate how much of a team effort this was. Even Jacob Ware got up to 20.
And his role shifted a bit after the Taylor injury.
Yeah, he went more to a halfback job, whereas Harvey Thomas played wing. So maybe Thomas and Ash could be part of the solution there, especially with Whitfield needing to have more of a back six assignment in Taylor's absence.
I also was surprised just how well the GWS Talls did against Cal Wilkie, who I think it's fair to say, again, he's in the A tier of defenders. He is not an S tier defender like Taylor, Stewart, Jeremy McGovern.
I did not enter this season thinking McGovern would still be considered S tier.
And you know who? I'll talk about him later, but is Charlie Comben maybe? Or is it just that he's the one guy keeping an otherwise terrible backline together?
I'll give him a B grade for now.
At the very least, he's moving up quickly. But yeah, Wilkie couldn't stop Jesse Hogan or any of the other Talls, and Zane Cordy was quiet until late. And I think it's just become pretty clear lately that this team needs Cordy to play pretty well.
Well, we were wondering, if there was a way for them to fit Dougal Howard back into things to have a more solid group at full back. I think that could be even more of a pressing need this coming week when you're facing a plethora of Talls of the Bulldogs.
The thing with Cordy before this week, it had been, he'd have a couple of good smothers, but also maybe
a couple clangers that result in goals.
And this week, he was just more
Clangery.
No, he was just more quiet.
I wonder if you'd even consider putting Cordy forward if King goes out to allow Howard in.
I mean, does he have forward skills? Well, I think you have enough guys that can do stuff up front that I think he'd be a little miscast there, and you have guys that are better cut out for the role.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you'd have Caminiti there. Membry will do heavier lifting, but Cordy could be expendable there as kind of a between the 50s swingman. By the way, nearly 12,500 showed out at the ACT for this game. It was their largest crowd at Monica since before COVID. And going back to the game at Marvel from Friday night,
they broke 50. It was great. This was a much better weekend for attendance than I had anticipated. I thought this was going to be a week without any really impressive crowds.
Yeah, 50,144. The first time they've broken 50 since 2013, believe it or not.
I mean, this was around with only one game at the G.
And that game wasn't all that highly attended, even though it was a home and away record for the two teams, just because even with the old Fitzroy base, it's not like the Demons have a huge base that's going to come in droves for a home and away game. They also had over 46,000 at Marvel on Saturday afternoon for the Eddie Betts Cup. Now, I try to watch games that don't involve my own team, West Coast, from an analytical perspective first and foremost. I could not do that in this game for so many reasons, especially because of the way it concluded. Carlton 14-14-98, defeated by the Adelaide Crows 16-4-100. This was kind of a what just happened. Hey, Sam Barry, fist bump? Martine, fist bump?
I've wanted to do this for a while. Now we can finally do it. This is a cause for celebration, not just for the Crows, who were referred to by Rachel Dangerfield as the pride of all Australia.
Accurate.
But I think this is a reason for 17 clubs to celebrate. So let's do that appropriately.
Hit it, Fable singers and other performers. Oh God, that sounds a mess. That was awesome.
Anyway, I end up usually pulling for one team or the other as a game goes on because either they get screwed by a bad call or I look at how it affects the ladder or just, something where I feel like one team deserves to win more. So even a game that I go into without a vested interest, say Dogs against Bombers, by the end of the game, usually I end up wanting one team to win.
We both entered this game clearly on the Crows' side.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm always anti-Carlton.
Even more than anti-Hawthorn at this point.
Yeah, you know what it is? They have this Michigan snotty vibe to them that I just don't like.
Michigan meets UCLA in some ways?
I don't see as much UCLA, but it's not that I don't appreciate and acknowledge Carlton's talent. We do follow a lot of smart and fun Carlton fans.
Nick Negroponte, for example.
Yeah, but they are easy to pull against. And I am happy with this one.
So much of the Crows' struggles got solved in this game. Matthew Mix completely altered the mix in the midfield. Way more center bounce time for Josh Rochelle, for Isaac Reichen. I think had more center bounce attendances in this game than he had all year. May have been the case for both of them, in fact. Jake Saligo just getting low and doing the difficult job where he might not always get the recognition for it and might not get the huge stats, but allowed for other players like Rory Laird to play much more freely. And Saligo actually, it did show up on the stat sheet in this one. 27, 15 contested, and 6 clearances.
Speaking of stats and Laird, both Rory Laird and Matt Crouch actually played with a purpose. Their disposals led to action going forward. Everything created something.
Crouch with 27 and 6 clearances as well, though I will say right away, he'll be on the sidelines next week. He was suspended for a high bump of Jack Carroll. People were wondering how that was a suspension when Zach Butters on Bailey Banfield wasn't. Honestly, I saw Butters as going for the ball more, being low enough to the ground that he was actually able to touch the ball before or as he laid the bump, whereas Crouch, his hands were well above the Sharon, so he couldn't make that same argument.
Sorry, all I can think of now is, with the 17 songs all at once, if we play loud, people think we're good.
People talk loud when they want to act smart, right?
Correct!
So I want to give some credit to Matthew Nix, who, credit we've been kind of critical of at times because he came up with maybe not the most conventional solution to get his midfield in order. And the forward group finally just lead up to their potential. The biggest factor there being Taylor Walker, just being a physical force. He ended up with 4 goals, 10 marks. Just even if those numbers by themselves are decent, not amazing, it was just such a pronounced difference from the prior weeks. He was excellent.
And Ben Key's getting a lot deeper as well than he might have been in Kane's past, where they were more waiting on the talls to do their thing and it never worked. He's got out back a decent amount. He had 10 marks himself and kicked 3-1 from 20.
I like the ways that they kind of combine, and I think there is a real blueprint to this moving forward. Having your forwards and midfielders alternate and having midfielders switch forward and forwards switch into the midfield and go back and forth with that more because it works.
I mean, you're managing players in-game a lot better that way, and also there are some players who are just able to flex through and maybe have that unsung half-forward job when they might by default be cast into more of a steady forward 50 role. We knew that Isaac Rankin and Josh Rochelle, though, could play through the middle, and we just haven't seen it this season. I think that was the obvious part. Less obvious, though, was Laird moving outside, Jordan Dawson going to half-forward at times and taking some important marks.
I think Dawson only had like 12 disposals for the game, but I thought his impact was better, honestly.
Ended up assisting one of Texas' goals, marked against Mitch McGovern for another, kept pressure on at the forward spot against a Carlton defense that was in better health at the start of the game anyway. Oh yeah, the Blues suffered 3 hamstring injuries on Saturday. Adam Chera before the game.
Not woof.
Adam Sod early in the game.
Woof.
And then Mitch McGovern in the second half.
Yeah, so that took a toll on their defense. I thought it was interesting also, a couple of the Crows lineup decisions, bringing Lachie Gallant back in. He actually played much better than he had in those first couple of games this year, so credit to him.
I think he had a really important job, even though he was subbed out.
Yeah, I thought he did well.
Yeah, well, a real tactical move there, especially being able to body up a bit to Tom DeConing in the ruck, where you had Mark Pidnet back in as the lead-in for the Blues. I thought that was an odd one there, but if you look back to their meeting last year, Riley O'Brien had really put a strong job in, and it made sense in that respect to get a more physical presence there in the ruck. And then when Gallant did go out, Sam Barry became part of that middle mix, got center bounce attendances, split time forward, and ended up kicking the high snap that gave him the lead with a minute 18 left. And that was despite Charlie Curnow having gone back, a rare time where Curnow going back doesn't work.
I still thought, like lineup-wise, Will Hamill being the defender that came in with Patrick Parnell hurt, is Curtin just not ready? Seemed like, I think he was a strange choice. Maybe they just didn't want to give him, such a tough first assignment. I don't know, but that was a strange decision that didn't seem popular. Hamill was okay.
Yes, it wasn't anything mind-blowing, nothing that says, oh yeah, he's got to stay in next week. In terms of, wow, I didn't think this guy would really work. Well, there was Gallant, there was also Braden Cook looking much more natural in a center to half forward job and scoring a rare goal for him as well.
Yeah, I actually really liked him, and I also really liked the way Luke Dinkervis played on the outside and kind of just his entry kicks into the forward 50 to set guys up. I thought he was really good.
Hadn't seen as much of that from Dinkervis the prior week, so nice that he was able to really play to his abilities more. In general, this Crows team was just able to play more to their natural abilities. I wouldn't say Matthew Nicks let the players have free reign, but he opened them up to just do what they should have been doing all along. I'm still shocked with how this game went, with the Crows scoring the final 3 goals to win it, getting the job done late in both 50s, and Mark Keane, who I enjoyed his whole time since coming back into the league.
He was really good.
Getting the final mark, I jumped out of my chair for that, and will sing the song pretty loudly. I am shocked that I did not wake up anybody. It was 2-something a.m. when this finished. I have no regrets.
On Carlton's side, first off, I think their body language after this game was just bad news for everybody else. I think they just kind of looked at this game and there were like small smiles and just like, man, we should have had that. But they went about this with a level of confidence afterwards where you can tell that they're going to be just fine. And I think it's at times been a shallow comparison, but I think just mentality, it's kind of similar to where Collingwood was last year. I think they knew that between the mix of injuries and kicking inaccuracy and Crows kicking accuracy, they probably just looked at this as man, a lot of things had to go wrong for us to lose this, but we're fine. And that's what I hate. I was hoping a loss like this would really rattle them,
especially when they got the Cats coming up in a couple weeks.
Yeah, but they came out of this game with like a level of assurance and confidence. I'd be very surprised, even if the Giants were healthier. I'd be very surprised if they lost next week.
Man, this stretch for the Blues is no joke. Next 4 weeks, Giants Saturday afternoon at Marvel, Cats Saturday afternoon at the G, Pies Friday night at the G, Demons Thursday night at the G, and then they got the Margaret game against the Swans after that too. Nothing's easy here.
Oh, here go hell come.
Here go hell come for the Blues or for their opponents? Or both?
Both.
Both is good.
I do want to give some credit to Sam Walsh, who I thought one of the best games I've seen him play, maybe the best.
Came back in and looked like he hadn't missed a beat at all despite the lingering back injury. 34 disposals, 13 tackles, 8 clearances, 611 meters, just always around the ball. Did he have 9 turnovers? Yes, but that's because he was around the ball so much. I don't put that turnover count against him.
Not all turnovers are created equal. Kind of like in basketball, you have live ball turnovers and dead ball turnovers. His were mostly like aggressive and just the product of being in contests. Benjamin, 78% of our listeners are between 18 and 35 years old, so they probably want to start a podcast like we did.
How did you know that number, Ethan?
Thanks to the analytics we have for Spotify for Podcasters.
Formerly known as Anchor, sorry Frio fans, Spotify for Podcasters has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from your phone or your computer. No fancy software needed.
It's so easy you can edit it while drunk.
And Spotify for Podcasters doesn't just allow you to upload to Spotify, you can also distribute your podcast on platforms like Apple, Stitcher, and more, just like we do.
Best of all, it's completely free.
Not only is it free, you can even make money from listener support or ad revenue. Hint, hint.
Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to podcasters.spotify.com to get started today.
If you just heard an advertisement, we hope you enjoyed it. If not, too bad. Maybe you'll enjoy our Twitter content instead at Americans Footy. We're also on YouTube and Instagram under that handle. I'm also on Twitter personally at BenjaminHK01.
I'm on Twitter at Castle Media. And the real star of the show, Brian Harambe, who is currently stationed at the end of the bed, is on Instagram at CatNameDryan.
I think he had a pretty good day yesterday considering what happened with the Sunday slate, but before that, got a couple more Saturday affairs to get to.
And now he also had a good day today because I gave him a Q-tip.
He knows that word so well that he turned to look at Ethan when he said the word.
Yeah, if you wanted, it's still on the floor over there.
We're an unusual family.
As I mentioned near the opening of the show, there were 3 games on US TV on Saturday. Well, Australian Saturday, our Friday night into Saturday morning. Giants and Saints on FS2, Blues and Crows on FS1. That did not disappoint in the slightest. Well, really none of them did. And then Power and Dockers on FS2 again. Those 3 games were decided by a combined margin of 6 points. The other game on Saturday?
It was not close. Good job, TV, getting it right. US TV?
53, because, US TV got it right, because this was the 7 game. Gold Coast Suns, 16-13-109, defeating Hawthorn 8-8-56.
The mighty Sun.
They kept the live trumpeter busy in this one.
Also, he's bald.
All right.
I didn't watch this game, and I have actually not watched it yet. I'm going to go back and watch it to figure out, who gets the polished turd and things like that.
I will make a strong case for Finn McGuinness, who started out as a defensive forward against Sam Flanders. That didn't really work. Flanders still got a hell of a lot of the ball. How about 34 disposals to be second in the game behind Noah Anderson? But McGuinness then did something that I don't think any of us would expect. He kicked 3 goals, entered the game having kicked 4 goals, 10 for his career.
So I'm going to give you what I know about this game based off of just reading stuff on Twitter.
And also the very minimal footage you've seen.
I've seen 0 other than a couple of Mac Andrew highlights, but it sounds like he was good.
Yeah, Andrew looked like he belonged. He was getting into it with Bobby Chol and a couple other guys. Chol was getting into it with people because first game against his former team, and there were some boos for him. So yes, Suns fans actually exist, and there's one we know of in the U.S., actually in Minnesota.
Minnesota!
So I bet she was watching this game. Also found out that Mac Andrew and Bobby Archol lived together last year.
But it sounded like, at least just going off of fan commentary, at least from Hawthorne people, that they should have lost this game by a lot more. They just completely got clapped.
Yeah, they got clapped in the middle. We knew what sort of potential and power the Suns had going through the middle. I didn't think, though, that they'd be able to stop Jai Newcomb and company to the extent that they did. Connor Nash has had a really down start to the year, unfortunately, and that continued in this one. If I had to give credit to one midfielder for the Hawks, I mean, James Worpel isn't a true midfielder, but I guess he'd be closest enough, and he got enough of the ball without looking terrible, ? But the Suns were so dominant in contest from the beginning, and it started with the usual suspects of Matt Rowell, Noah Anderson, and Tuke Miller, but it also spread to some of their second gamers with Sam Closey and Will Graham, who had 14 tackles, following up really well and keeping on the pressure while giving a nice kick or two in there as well. Graham, as well as Ethan Reed and Jed Walter, had even more support than usual because pretty much the entire Palm Beach Currumbin Club came out for him, and they celebrated with him on the boundary right when the game was over for their first win with the club. I love those sorts of scenes. It was a big and loud circle for the Suns, and that was fun.
We were talking about the midfield. How much is Will Day's absence factoring in right now for Hawthorne?
I think Day's absence meant that they were, in a lot of situations, kind of a man or at least a skilled player down, because the Suns are not a team where you can just overwhelm them with size. You do have to have some finesse in there as well. And with Newcomb being occupied in particular, and Nash just being a big body at the moment, having somebody else in there like Day to go along with Warble could have made a real difference. And maybe he could have also stemmed the bleeding a bit with some defensive one-on-one tasks as well, because Ben King won a lot, even though he only ended up kicking 4-4, had a really shaky start, but rebounded, something his brother would not be able to do. I hadn't really thought about Will Day much as the Hawks got off to this 0-5 start, and maybe we should have been talking about his absence more in hindsight.
I know Connor Nash was catching some heat for his performance, and I wonder if maybe he's also struggling because of Day's absence. I think he could extend the same to Jai Newcomb, who I thought was just going to have a mammoth season. And I mean, season's still young, but he hasn't impressed much yet.
No, long way to go there. Rowell won against Newcomb when he had that matchup and just won in general. It's not just getting to the ball so quickly and creating clearances himself, but it's also handball intercept skills that were really on display in this game. When the Hawks looked like they were out, usually Rowell or Anderson would stop that and be able to turn things around really quickly. And from there, I think Hawthorne were trying to help out and bring more numbers toward the middle. And all that ended up causing was Gold Coast forwards getting out behind with ease, because the Suns went up toward the play as well. So I think the Hawks both wanted to get more involved with the midfield and were coasting to getting a little closer by the Gold Coast forwards. And then as soon as possession was clearly established, Suns forwards went out back and made things look easy from there because, well, it is easy when you're in space. Once you watch this game more, you're going to keep being the town crier when it comes to Sam Closey just looking so smooth for a second gamer. So he looked pretty good as a first gamer. He kicked 2 goals straight from 18 and 8 marks. It was the kicking skills that I noticed more in this game rather than general movement and handballing. So seeing more of another element of his game. I've been excited about the Suns for a couple of years before at the start of the year, but I'm wondering, are we getting too ahead of ourselves here? This is just against Hawthorne. It's nice to get the young guys in against these lesser teams. I think we're going to be starting to learn a lot more about where the Suns are in immediate terms, really as early as this coming Sunday afternoon, because they're out at the SCG against the Swans, a rested Swans team as well that has players who can body up to them in the midfield. Matt Rowell versus James Rowbottom might just leave a crater in the middle of the SCG.
Oh, that's going to be awesome. That's another one that will, as people now like to say, feed families. I think that's the new, like calling everything a movie. That was the thing for a while.
My life is a movie,
or tonight's going to be a movie. It was more like tonight's going to be a movie. And then there were the jokes, like so-and-so would say my life is a movie. The one I came up with I thought was pretty good. Girls with one arm saying my life is a movie. Yeah, Soul Surfer. Well, hey, the original title for that movie, problem was it had already been used. A Farewell to Arms. That's
really, really bad. Unlike the Suns' one-on-one defenders, much better game for both Charlie Ballard and Sam Collins, a return to form there. The Suns are really good at forcing opponents to kick long, which leads to high intercept mark numbers. Midfield pressure helps with that, and then it leads to easier times on the back end as well. So I know you had some questions about them last week, but I think they're on much more even footing going into this very important early season trip to Sydney. I would love to see, by the way, for the Suns to double up against one New South Wales team every year, no matter what. I think that's another one that if you're looking for like a second permanent fixture for them, that would be in there. It would like make sense geographically. Give the Lions one of those as well.
I don't know though, because like the Giants always have Carlton, it seems, which I'm now totally fine with, and like the Swans have a few that seem like they always need to happen. So I don't know if you can make it work from the New South Wales perspective. I think we could definitely make it work from the Queensland team perspective.
And also, of course, they'll probably both the expansion teams will have Tasmania in there. So is the expansion cup going to become a three-way trophy? Like the Beehive booth?
I don't think so. I think Team 19 and 20 get their own.
So hopefully we'll look forward to a Tasmania versus Canberra rivalry.
Yes.
Captains Riley Sanders and Tom Green.
Sure. We have been supporters from the start of Canberra getting Team 20. I know there's an argument for a third Perth or Adelaide team or a Northern Territory team.
I know Norwood's making a real push to try to be 20, and that it would be kind of more of a Southwest look like Bunbury perhaps. But Canberra's actually got the fan base showing out for a team that isn't their own yet, and it's not just the Tom Green fan club.
I was surprised there was no rival like Jack Steele fan club.
Yeah, that was a missed opportunity there by the Saints.
I was hoping we were going to have like a whole like all-out gang war. Port Adelaide 9-12-66 defeated Fremantle 9-9-63.
Also known as the good Saturday night game. This matchup has given us good ones over the past few years. There was that big one in 2022 where it was just one of Sam Powell-Pepper's very typical games in a good way. Even last year at the end of the season, Port always had the advantage, but never by too much. And you saw Tom Emmett getting into the action. Got into the action this one as well. I have been flying the Tom Emmett flag since the beginning. I think, Ethan, when you've been talking about this game to me and from what I saw as well, I think we're really going to be flying the Avant Soto flag in some of this discussion here.
Yeah, at least early on. I think it faded some later, but he was beating Luke Jackson on a lot of hitouts. Now, Jackson ended up with far more actual disposals, and I don't think clearance numbers were that great. In fact, they actually favored Frio 40-31, but I still thought, like, in this case, in a lot of games, hitouts are not a very important stat. I think they actually mattered in this game because when Soto got them, it just allowed a bunch of different midfielders to go to work for Port. And I think this game boiled down to Port's ability to have a bunch of different guys contribute, go up against Frio's couple of best guys. And I think ultimately the team won out over the great individuals, even though the Dockers did more to actually have the game on their terms when it came to the pace and probably had the better individual performers in both 50s. Alex Pearce for All-Australian? Yeah, that's the other one. I think he's one you can move into that S tier of defenders right now.
Over the first 5 rounds, I would say so. I think I need to see it more consistently until the bye to really put him there. But to match up against Charlie Dixon the way he did, even with a couple losses, I think he went 9 for 11 in his contested one-on-ones.
He did a terrific job and moved the ball well.
Dixon even said he totally had me. And he was
word for word, I believe it was, he dominated me all night. Giggity. But he was right.
Even then,
good interview.
Dixon isn't one to mince words ever, whether it's talking to other players or the media. I think that's another reason why I like him so much, as well as just how physical he is as a tall. I know that it seems like a decent amount of people don't like him. I don't know why.
I think he's a fun player. He's charismatic. He's really good.
I think the way he plays just kind of resonates with American sports fans, just kind of like is like the powerful tall that we associate in other sports.
Like when he beats you,
you feel it.
You just shrug. It's like, damn, what are you going to do?
And that's probably how Pearce felt with 4.5 minutes to go to put the game back within 2 points.
Yeah, and then Jason Horne-Francis ended up kicking the go-ahead goal with 3:11 left. He didn't have the biggest game, but stepped up when he needed to. Finished with 18 disposals and 6 marks.
Okay, I kept getting a kick out of seeing Jason Horn-Francis and Miles Bergman both have big moments. Horn-Francis actually had a perimeter kick to Bergman that led to a monster goal from Miles. And I just couldn't stop laughing about that, just in the context of what Josh Garlop had posted.
Oh, that was funny.
Well, the advertiser clearly isn't the only one to mix up Jason Horn-Francis and Miles Bergman.
I don't mix them up once I see a number on the back. I'm usually good at telling their faces apart. I mix Miles and Miller Bergman up much more.
Even though Miller's hardly played this year and is on a team that's well off the pace.
Yeah, just because they're similar names. You know, it's like Josh and Jake Kelly. They're both 4-letter J names, so.
And then we have family friends who had twins named Ethan and Ian. Good luck to the twins even as they're trying to understand their names.
Yeah, that's tough. Anyway, it's tough for Frio, who I don't know if they outplayed the Power, but they definitely, for the second week in a row, dictated how the game was played and have no points to show for it.
This is a big setback for a team that's going to be in a crowded elimination final mix when it's said and done.
Well, here's the thing. My perception on them has totally improved compared to last year. I still think they got nowhere near enough trading away Akers a year ago and Schultz now, even as Schultz has struggled some.
Again, Tom Emmett and Bailey Banfield were the ones to help with that. Bailey Banfield is a forward. He kicked a goal and then did get ragdolled and pumped a bit, but you got to expect that at this when you're playing that role. And against a physical team like Port, especially with Zach Butters in there. And then Emmett came in as the third man on a pack to mark in front of, I think it was Giannis versus Brandon Zerk-Thatcher. That's a real team play moment there.
I also thought it was a breakout game for Josh Tracy, who's been good, but not this dominant. I think the 3 goals, 16 disposals, 9 marks don't do anywhere near enough to speak positively about how he played, becoming a full field mark, impacting the game in the middle of the field. And he was just clearly the most dominant forward for Frio and maybe the most dominant forward overall. I think pretty convincingly the most dominant forward overall. Just, again, Port having a bunch of different guys step up, whether it was Horn-Francis late, Bergman having a few moments, Alier making a couple plays in the back,
Dan Houston doing his very typical Dan Houston things and being much more noticeable in that this week.
This was team versus a couple of great individuals. And that's funny because usually Frio, they are a pretty complete team. And I'm not saying they were not a complete team, but they had a few individuals that stood out in this game. I still think team-wise, I like what Frio's doing. It's not the most exciting game, typically, unless it's close finish like this one.
I mean, people who are part of the Adam Simpson coaching tree usually don't do super exciting things. I mean, that's usually up to the individual players to provide those real sparks and wow moments. You see that from Frio, you see that from Hawthorne.
But I also am totally back on the Frio train in terms of in the next couple years, somewhere between 25 and 28, Flagmantle could be a thing. And I think right now they could be a finals team. And that even though, these last 2 losses will sting, I think if you told them that they'd be 3-2 at this stage, they'd take it. Yeah. If you told them before the season started, just you'd be 3-2, not you could just as easily be 5-0, but you're 3-2, you're playing your style, could be a lot worse. And I think big picture, things are much better than you'll feel looking at just these couple of games. I do think they really missed Michael Frederick in this game. I think Sam Switkowski needed to take on a bigger role and was just kind of okay, and Michael Walters was almost completely shut down.
I know Switkowski was a little bit of an injury question going into this week, so maybe there's something in that.
One weird thing, is there something in Jager O'Meara's contract that he can't play a full game? Because he got subbed out again, even though it was Matthew Johnson that had faded.
Well, Johnson, had he been subbed out the prior week? Or has he just been down 2 games in a row?
I think, but it's also just
why O'Meara?
Yeah, that and Neil Erasmus only getting brief appearances as the sub doesn't seem to be conducive to his development. If Frio had won, a lot of credit would have needed to go to Luke Ryan because he played a great 4th quarter after being just kind of okay until that point. This was a fun watch, though. This was a fun game, despite the fact that they do not play the most captivating styles. This was a fun game and a good matchup of 2 non-Victorian teams that aren't even in the same state.
That we just both like for the sake of the individuals, and it was just individual little moments that kept this so gripping.
I like both these teams. I think I like Frio more but I like both these teams.
I think I was a little late comer to Frio just because of my West Coast fandom and had liked Port along with West Coast from the start. So it's nice to kind of see us both appreciate both sides of this game. This just broke as we are recording this a little before 6 p.m. Pacific time on Sunday evening. So before 11 a.m. Melbourne time Monday morning. Congratulations to Jason Dunstall on being elevated to legend status. Surprised it hadn't happened yet.
Is legend status basically just like a super Hall of Fame?
Basically, yes.
I like that.
Also,
there's the Hall of Very Good. I like the super Hall of Fame, like the inner circle of the Hall of Fame.
And Jason Dunstall reminds me of the similarly sounding James Tunstall. Wait, where was he for the Lions?
Oh yeah, first unused sub of the year.
We had an unused sub in James Tunstall. I'm surprised that we didn't mention that earlier.
And we had our second Victory Cigar sub of the year.
And that was Mark Blitzovs, who I'm then surprised was not involved in the carrying off of Reece Stanley. I thought just based on size, it's going to be Blitzovs and Cameron. Nope, it was...
Who was it? It was Stewart and Duncan? Tui, or I don't even remember. They didn't struggle with him as much as they struggled with carrying off Hawkins.
Oh no, that was a good one. Congratulations to Reece Stanley on his 200. Congratulations to Zach Tui and Mitch Duncan on AFL Life membership for 300 sanctioned games, and that includes all preseason and representative. And congratulations to the Cats on making it look easy starting with the second quarter. Geelong 21-13, 139, defeating North 10-64. I do want to applaud North for a couple things.
They had a couple of individual performers, and that's about it.
Charlie Cullen being there in defense still.
He was the entire defense, and he ran out of steam late from having to carry them on his back. But he was good. I really liked his game.
He initially was cast as a ruck forward option there in the mix, along with guys like Callum Coleman-Jones, fighting for time before this year as a third string option behind Goldstein and Tristan Cherry. He was moved back in the VFL out of necessity, and it looks like he really should be sticking there, even when you get Josh Goder coming back next year. I think you could structure a defensive 50 for North for the future out from Cumbin and Goder,
and maybe Callan Dawson.
Dawson, potentially, yeah. I think I feel much stronger about the other two in there already. Harry Cecil accumulated, 38 for him?
38, yes.
And
also a goal and 2 assists.
Yeah, actually more full field impact for him because they figured, what do we have to lose by letting Harry cook?
He can be kind of in that like Nick Dacos role.
That's what I was hoping out of him all along, and hopefully this sounds some alarms in Clarko's head that that's what should be done. Eddie Ford with a 3 goals showing we are the Eddie Ford fan club in America.
Yeah, the list of positives for North: Sheasel, Ford,
Cumbin, Tom Powell with 3 still.
Yeah, I guess Bailey Scott.
Well, Powell doing things other than just making a fuck ton of tackles. 9 marks and 3 assists to his name.
Yeah, I guess Blake Drury was all right, and then that's about it.
Yeah, Drury with his first 2 goals, he was one of the ones that you could have met.
I know, I'm still haunted by that. God.
Yeah, it was Sheasel, I think Wardlaw, Drury, and Jerry, who were all at a Stanford football game in October and November.
October, yes. Also, speaking of Sheasel, I don't try to just he had a lot of possessions. Like, look at what I said about Nick Martin a couple weeks ago.
And of course, Martin and Sheasel will still get Brownlow votes.
But I thought he was just really good at using open space, kind of like Nick Dacos in that sense. That's where I think it's a fair comparison. And I think on a better team, he would be getting a lot more love. But I thought he played well.
Well, he's locked in until 2030. So hopefully they're able to get something good around him and he can really open up his game rather than just being the kick out of halfback most of the time.
So going on, this was Reece Stanley's 200th. And I think even though the Cats ended up losing hit-outs 41-28, I thought he did a really good job, especially early, to get things going. North's one push came late in the first quarter, where they had back-to-back goals to cut it to 26-19, and then Brad Close scored right before the siren to end the first quarter, and then it really got out of hand. A 7-goal-to-1 second quarter. It was very easy from there. That was about it. I had doubted Reece Stanley, and these last 2 weeks he's played well. So he would kind of be the opposite of one of my favorite copy pastas. I think, I hope Alistair Clarkson just goes out and says this after a loss. The haters said I couldn't do it, and they were correct. Honestly, great call from the haters. One of my favorite quotes. I think like when the Atlanta Hawks get knocked out right away in the play-in tournament, you get to use it. So I have a prediction about this game that I think I am going to, even though it voids like the track my brown, I think I'm going to still go as correct on this. Where I said Jeremy Cameron and Tom Hawkins combined for at least 7. Well, Jeremy Cameron and Tom Hawkins' replacement combined for 9, and Cameron himself kicked 6. So Shannon Neal was a late in, Tom Hawkins got managed, and I was not a big believer before. I am now. 3 goals in the behind. Here's the thing. When you look at Shannon Neal, you think he's just going to be like a lumbering oaf. I mean, you look at his body type. That's not a knock on him.
I think that's just our perception of these newer 200 centimeter or like 6'6" or so recruits. Oh, he's 6'8", so that's what, like 202, 203?
And we're not allowed to know his weight, of course.
Point is,
he looks like he should be big and clumsy. He doesn't look like he's very agile. But then you watch his ball movement, you watch his footwork, his finesse, his touch on everything. Like, he's crafty. He does a good job on sequences along the ground. Like, he's got more skills than just take marks and be a backup ruck. And I was really happy with his performance.
I think we'd start seeing it a bit in the preseason over these past couple years, but actually seeing it at an AFL level game, even against a clearly lesser opponent like that, is extremely satisfying when you're just thinking about how Geelong is going to keep up once Hawkins and Cameron are out of the picture. And I think also it's just that more of these 6.5 foot plus recruits these days are just allowed to have more free range on the oval and impact more than just their designated 50 as a forward or a back. That's what strikes me so much about Ethan Reed for the Suns in a similar way, just like, damn, this guy moves so well for his size. And Neal might not be like the Ethan Reed level of mover, but does well enough. And I think he's probably taken some good notes from just watching and learning from Jeremy Cameron in having that full field impact as well. Cameron had, 27 last week, 6 straight from 21 this time, also 3 assists. I think that's more than Brian Myers for the game, surprisingly.
Yeah, Brian had 2 assists, 23 disposals. Other favorite player in this game, I've talked so much about how this team's strength has been, it's not that there's one midfielder that's going to dominate, it's a bunch of different ones. So I thought in this game, like Jack Bowes was the most consistent, but Tanner Bruin started on fire and then gave way to Brandon Parfit, who ended up with 7 clearances. Bowes, 8 clearances.
Remember when Brandon Parfit was on the fringe?
Yeah. Now it's like going to be hard to take him out of the lineup.
Yeah. What do you do when Dangerfield and Guthrie come back in? You've still got to fit Gary Rowan into the mix as well.
I mean, I think Zach Toohey is the first one.
I think Toohey and then Jai Clark.
Yeah, I think maybe you just, look, these things end up solving themselves or end up creating problems because someone gets hurt. For now, I will just enjoy having 30 plus guys for those 23 spots, and I'm not going to complain about it. And is suffering from success.
And this is what you need for a premiership contender in the first place, is to have that depth beyond the best 23 plus the emergencies.
One more North Melbourne observation. Bigoa Nuon. Am I saying that right? Nuon?
Nuon maybe. Biggie. Listed as a forward for some reason in fantasy. The fuck?
Yeah, well, he got beat one-on-one by Jeremy Cameron, but that was just a bad matchup for him. He's still kind of wiry. He either is going to need to put on more muscle or just be like a roving defender, but I think there's potential there for this guy. I'm glad he's getting games. It's funny now with Richmond's injuries, he would have he'd probably have gotten hurt and he wouldn't be getting games there because he'd be hurt.
Yeah, but Richmond let a guy go out after tearing his ACL in the reserves.
But there's potential there for him. I can't say as many positive things about Luke McDonald, who just clanger after clanger. Yeah, I think with North at this point, I think the best thing to do is really lean into just playing as many young guys as possible and taking the good with the bad. And even if you get clapped, you'll have some positives out of each game. Also, a quieter game for Nick Larkey, but he still got a couple. I am worried with the upcoming stretch of schedule how Jack Henry's going to do against some of these top defenders. I would probably rather have Sam DeConing taking some of those one-on-one assignments again, even if he's not quite back to 2022 form.
Noted Larkey had those couple goals there. Now over 200 goals in under 100 games. For him to get that output, despite clearly being the top target for absolutely everybody all the damn time, is fucking amazing, honestly.
I was a little worried about Luke Davies-Uniacke dominating after the Libba experience last week. He did get 27 disposals in the goal, but a lot of that was late. They just made sure that he didn't have a lot of space. That's what made me happy. They didn't give him a lot of room to operate. So, good job.
It has to be this sort of team performance in the middle. I think we've said from the beginning about this team, it was even something that we saw in 2022. The midfield has to be good enough.
And in this game, the midfield was actually good, not just good enough.
Yeah, that's the thing there that was the best surprise about it, especially going up against Davies-Uniacke and Powell. Also, surprised we haven't talked about Connor O'Sullivan yet on debut.
Good job.
Yeah, unafraid to go toward hotter spots on the ground, play on the inside when he's most well known for his defensive 50 and wing capabilities. I like the early signs there, and I'm not sure how many games you're going to be able to get into him at this point.
Confident in his handballing ability, which I like. He did not play shaky. You know, you see a lot of guys in their debut, like there are obvious jitters. I didn't see that out of him.
So, we ended the round out in Perth. Happens a lot. The Eagles started slowly. Happens a lot. Said I'd give this game till quarter time, and then if it got out of hand, I'd just be done with it. I'm glad I gave it that chance because after playing the first 15 to 20 minutes time on, like they just forgot about what worked in Mount Barker, they actually turned things on. And the Eagles are off the mark for 2024. Harley Reid is off the mark for his career. West Coast 16-13-109, defeating Richmond 10-10-70.
Congratulations to the West Coast Eagles, 2024 football game winners.
Sigh of relief.
8-goal to 3 second quarter.
Their first 8-goal quarter in, I believe, 3 years, and also just the second 8-goal quarter this year across the AFL.
The other was the Bulldogs against the Eagles, right? Or was it against the Suns? It was their 9-goal first quarter, actually.
Yeah, there it was. I am surprised that the Eagles didn't allow one.
If you had told me the Eagles were going to win this game, even at the start of the week, I could have seen how it would have happened. I like, yeah, they kick accurately. Richmond's just not that good.
Well, they kicked accurately in the first half, 11-2, and then trailed off from there. 4-6 in the third, 1-5 in the fourth, and got me a little worried at times that there were going to be some defensive breakdowns off those kick-ins, but cut off enough in the middle.
Really dominated the midfield, which, because Tim Taranto broke his wrist during training on, I think it was it Friday or Saturday? Anyway, that was significant. I think that's just a testament to his value.
Richmond's injury luck is as bad as the Eagles last year, ?
It's really bad. And just the midfield without Taranto or Jacob Hopper, it's not pretty.
Yeah, no Taranto, no Hopper, no tall forwards without Balta or Lynch. I mean, I guess your tallest forward by default then is
Jacob Koshitsky.
He pinch hits as a ruck more and had some time in the middle. I would say Maikelti Lafau.
He was a bright spot. The list of bright spots is short.
Shea Bolton, Liam Baker, and Maikelti Lafau, I would say.
Lafau was a 3-goal game.
Yeah,
and you made your case for Bolton to get the polished turd vote. I did not watch this game as closely, but I think there's a case for Lafau, and I think it would be especially funny. Guys who only switched to this form of football recently gets award that didn't exist until a month ago in his fourth game.
The other bright spots, oh, what a surprise. Richmond's Westerners going off back home. Shea Bolton and Liam Baker doing their typical things. Bolton with 3 goals and some pretty insane plays. Otherwise, insane assist kick that he got off. That was a setup for Lafau. Actually, it didn't lead to a goal. Lafau climbed that one into the post in the late third quarter. But when Richmond got out, it was usually either because of and or through Bolton. So that's why I give Bolton my vote. It's the full field game versus the forward 50 game. But otherwise, this was dominance for West Coast. Healthy Elliot Yeo and Tim Kelly mean so much. Look, I knew that better health was going to make things a lot easier for West Coast this year. I didn't realize just how impactful Yeo could still be. 27 disposals, 19 contested, 15 clearances, 13 score involvements, 2-1 plus 2 assists. Nobody has had 15 clearances and 2 goals in a game since, somebody else who was in this game, Dusty. And he did it against the Eagles at the start of his Brownlow year.
Also, there was a lot of hype surrounding like Dusty versus Harley Reid, and Reid did use the fend off on him once.
Yeah,
that was cool.
That was fucking amazing. I remember somebody made like a Lightning McQueen Jackson Storm meme about it, where with like the enjoy your retirement thing. Reed is continuing to learn just like how he actually has to pick his battles at the top level. And every game you're seeing better signs from it. He had a couple really bad ones that he couldn't shake off against the Bulldogs, then broke 7 tackles against the Swans, then maybe didn't get into as many, intentional, I have to go through these guys moments, but fought through congestion when it came to him.
If you put this guy on a really good team,
like the Cats in a few years,
God, I can dream.
I can dream, Harold!
It's going to be amazing just because you're not going to be able to focus as much on him. And then he's just going to really be able to overpower people. And what I've liked about his game so far the most is just like someone his size should not be able to have the skill set he has. That's what stood out to me.
I mean, he's 6'2". How big do you think, how small do you think?
Well, he looks a lot bigger than 6'2". I think he's just got a lot of muscle is the thing.
That must be it because he's the same height as Dusty and not as heavy either.
Well, we're not allowed to know anybody's weight.
Well, reported weights from junior levels last year had him around 172 pounds, and Dusty was around 190, 195.
He looks bigger than the measurables, and he plays like he should be some really tiny, low-to-the-ground guy.
In a Tony Liberatore-like fashion,
I guess.
I think going back and watching Tony Liberatore highlights, that's kind of what it makes me think of, just being just that sort of fearlessness and effectiveness that he's got.
But he was really good. Yo was excellent. Kelly was good. And then the guy who's been the Eagles' best forward without Oscar Allen did it again, except this time was more than just like
a couple.
You noticing it?
Well, you kick a career-high 6 goals. That'll do it. And Jake Waterman didn't just do that. 13 marks and 10 contested possessions as well. I knew he'd have to carry a lot of weight in the forward 50 once Allen...
You're not allowed to know how much weight he carries, though.
Yes. Once Allen went down, though, and I'm surprised just how well he was able to do that. I'm really looking forward to when Allen comes back in so that the two of them could potentially play off each other. This has me have a sliver of hope for some future things here. Looking at some other forward things, better game out of Jack Petrocelli as well, getting a couple. Jack Williams kicking a longer goal as well. He's a longer-term project for them, but that's starting to bear some more fruit. We're talking a lot about individuals right now, but the bigger thing about this game in general for the Eagles is
they won the midfield.
They won the midfield, and like last week, the younger players are leading the way in terms of pace and play style. They know that they can't just take their time and switch sides in the back like Adam Simpson's teams have done for, a decade now?
It felt like the entirety of the second and third quarters were played in West Coast's forward half.
And that was because of what the younger group did. They took on the game, they kept numbers in the corridor, they weren't afraid to lower their heads and actually physically go up against those more seasoned players for Richmond, and it kept working. Did Reed and Jinby and a couple others get into some contest that they couldn't win? Yes, especially when Richmond's got some strong tacklers in there, including another fearless one there in Morris Rioli Jr.
I am loving his performance more and more, as much as the last couple weeks have stuck for Richmond, and blowing a pretty good sized lead against the Saints, and then this. Watching him just fly around and tackle guys. Could you imagine him as like a safety in the NFL?
Oh man. I don't know how Adam Uze unlocked this in him over the summer, but he's been playing with so much more confidence and has done better in terms of forward 50 work as well when he actually gets the ball. So big watch there for Morris Rioli Jr. to continue his work. And also great that he showed up in a game where they were actually talking about his father on the broadcast because, Morris Rioli Sr. played in the first ever game against the Eagles.
For Richmond?
Yeah, 1987 was Morris Sr.'s last season, and the Eagles used this game as a way to honor their 1987 team. I wish they had worn their original gold jumpers that they used to wear at home for that as well, but it was great to see the original team out there along with other club legends, and it felt like a very proud club culture day, which I haven't really been able to say about the Eagles for 3 years now.
It's funny remembering 2020 and 2021 Eagles crowd shots versus now, where now it's just there's no anger. They're just hey, we won a game. Hey, there's stuff happening here.
and they had over 47,500 there. Now, this matchup always draws well. Richmond has a great base in the West.
I was wrong about one thing. We did not see the famed many cultures, many beliefs, one Tiger Army sign.
We saw like the WA Tiger Army.
The WA Tiger Army seems to have its own thing going.
Yeah, like how the Western Bombers have their own thing as well. But the fact that Eagles fans have continued to show out like this, especially last year, seeing a vastly underperforming team compared to just 5 years prior, speaks volumes to what the club has built and just the strength of the fan base in general. And I hope that these younger players can continue to repay them.
I look at this. I look at the crowds they had, when they had to play Dreamtime in Perth, which also had like the coolest in-match entertainment I've ever seen. And I think there really is an argument for not just a third Perth team, because again, look, we're biggest advocates for ACT getting a team, but a Perth.
Gather round.
Yes, that is what I'm shooting for. If they just like alternate it every year between Adelaide and Perth, I'd be down with that. Or I know they've talked about like playing multiple, but Perth is a great footy city. Optus is the nicest stadium.
And then they'd obviously, get upgrades to other places, maybe put games at the old Waka ground and a couple others. Too bad Subiaco isn't around in any footy stadium form anymore, because it would have been so cool to put something out there and utilize some of the bigger waffle venues as well. It could be really special. On the topic of younger Eagles, though, looking at the waffle performance where, holy shit, they also won against the reigning premiers at East Frio. There are actually things going on here. Liam Ryan playing off half back is actually making sense. A better ball mover there would do a lot for them, and it would also be able to keep Ryan Merrick and Noah Long operating in the forward part of the ground.
Bit of a quieter game for Long. Merrick was the sub, right?
Yeah, he came on for Luke Edwards, who got subbed out concussed. Considering he can be more of an outside operator, there's a little bit of a quandary there, but I'm looking for more debuts in the Western Derby. Maybe Harvey Johnston, who showed some real promise with a couple goals and smart kicking in the waffle.
I expect minimal changes from this week.
Yeah, but I think a sensible change would be to get Johnston in there. He's getting some like Hewitt Cluggage type comparisons, but with a little more speed on him for his outside midfield ability. Clay Hall among that group as well. Locke Rawlinson fighting to get back in after an omission, trying to get his first game in the 22. Look, it's not going to be a year where you're going to see too many more wins like this, I think. But if we keep seeing Simpson shuffle pieces around and being willing to play the youngsters, then I think this year could be really productive as a way to gauge where the list is, especially in the 23 and under crop, to really make the backbone for this next era of the West Coast Eagles.
You mentioned East Fremantle, and I only care about one thing affiliated with East Fremantle.
Zippy Fish.
I also wanted to throw in real quick, I thought Tom Cole, a couple weeks ago, I was very critical of his actual defending. Kicks to enter the forward 50 were pretty good. Maybe he just belongs on a wing. Is that crazy to suggest?
I mean, the Eagles don't have like a super clear wing at this point. I think Johnston could end up taking that spot eventually, but maybe as a stopgap solution, because I don't like Cole being in defense right now, just with how easily he can give up frees and with some of his kicking issues in the back. I was advocating for Alex Witherden to come back in over Cole, and Witherden did get in. It was just because Callum Jameson did his hamstring. So maybe there is some potential there for Cole to play further down the ground for now.
I'm sorry, but as bad as Jameson has played, that's not a downgrade.
It is kind of addition by subtraction here, unfortunately, because I've been wanting good things for Jameson. It just hasn't been happening. He was my sleeper pick out of necessity because I didn't want to pick a new draft pick, and there really wasn't much else there.
You had tied in one of the Eagles youngsters to Hugh McCluggage, which I think is just a good way to tie up this entire round. Because remember, the very first game involved the Lions, and we didn't talk much about McCluggage, who I thought this was his best game of the year. He was physical, he was in control, he wasn't reckless. And that was good tie-in on my part. Go me. Because of when we're recording this, we do not have the nominees yet for this week for Goal and Mark, but there were a couple of really nice hangers. I can't remember at the moment who took them. We'll talk about them when we do the round 6 preview, which we're recording earlier than usual, so we won't know much about lists. But because Benjamin over here is heading off to San Diego again, we're recording that on our Monday night, your Tuesday evening.
So a lot more speculation there. Our ideas for what list changes should be rather than what they'll actually be.
But yeah, that's when we'll have the goal and mark nominees. Also, tough round for main character. Remember last round it was Alex Wetton, the umpire who paid that dissent free kick on Jordan Clark. Tough to decide for this round. I mean, you could go Harley Reid. You could go Sam Barry.
So just for having an impact as the sub. And so
when the winner and, 0-4 beats 4-0.
And he also fit in with really the description of everything there in terms of fitting into the center bounce mix. I think, though, just because of where our narrative has gone and how early we were on it, we talked about this off mic as well. Is it just Luke Beveridge for being Luke Beveridge?
Yes, it's Luke Beveridge.
Should we put it up to a poll?
Sure, let's do it.
So what, Luke Beveridge, Barry, Reed, and Waterman?
Yeah. Jeremy Cameron did have a pretty fun interview after the game where he said he was so excited to go watch the Masters and said he was going to go pull an all-nighter. But he said golf is the greatest game in the world. And, he loves footy. He's damn good at it. He loves golf more.
Do we need an AFL Golf Champions Tour?
Yes. Do you realize how much money they could do with a charity golf tournament?
Or just in general, an Australian Sports Champions Tour. Bring in people from all codes and sports to do that. People would show out for that all across Australia.
Oh, one other thing that I want to mention with this round. Unsung hero because he only got on camera for a couple seconds. Connor O'Sullivan's dad. His name is Jamarl. Remember, this is a white guy. Jamarl.
Well, probably something like Jamal.
I'm a little disappointed that he gave his kid such a normal name.
Is it the opposite of Brian Myers' parents where they have normal names?
I guess so. But yeah, I am all in favor of people with funny names.
Jamarl O'Sullivan, Zippy Fish, Brian Myers, the list goes on.
There are a couple other really good middle names I've mentioned before. Trevor Jadaniel Rogers of the Miami Marlins. Or, well, I guess this one is a first name, but he goes by his middle name. Javon Alexander Mack.
Yes, former football center Alex Mack from Cal Bears, Cleveland Browns, Atlanta Falcons, and I guess the 49ers at the end. We can do more fun name stuff online at Americans Footy on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, all that good stuff. I'm at Benjamin HK01 on Twitter. More commitment news coming from me soon.
I am at Castle Media. Brian Harambe, who is still sitting right here, is on Instagram at catnamedbrian.
There was a big, well, actually, Brian knows this word, so I'll spell it out. There's a really big SPIDER upstairs, and hopefully Ethan will catch it, so Brian may partake.